Hello there. Across my social media accounts, including here on YouTube, a sentiment that I've seen expressed fairly frequently is some variation of, I would love to design my own amigurumi, but it's too hard. I don't think I could do it. And I would just like to say, I respectfully disagree. I think anyone with a basic understanding of crochet can design their own amigurumi, and today I just want to share with you all a few tips that I hope will encourage those of you that are interested in doing so, but are hesitant for whatever reason to just, get in there and get started. So a bit of context, this video is going to end up being part of a larger series, one that I've kind of been working on for a while now. The primary focus of that series will be designing your own amigurumi, but my plans with that is to sort of break down the amigurumi making process into individual components and then further break those individual components down into difficulty levels, so like beginner, intermediate, and advanced. It's still a work in progress, but my thinking with this series is I want to try and teach techniques that can apply broadly to amigurumi rather than just teach how to make a specific amigurumi. I mean, I could do that, there is value in that, but if I teach you how to make, a frog, at the end of the process, I've just taught you how to make a frog. I want to try and approach this from the angle of I teach the techniques, or at least the ones I know, and then you can apply them to anything you want to create. Because I'm working on that series, we won't be going into great detail today. Just think of these as tips to prepare you for your upcoming amigurumi designing journey. So let's get into those now. Number one is get yourself some scrap yarn. This is fairly self-explanatory. You don't want to be ruining good or high quality yarns while you're learning and experimenting. Find some scrap yarn to be your training wheels. I know it's not everyone's cup of tea, but in my opinion, I think acrylic is the best to start out with just because it is easy to work with and it's comparatively inexpensive. Once you have some yarn to work with, scrap or otherwise, venture out into the wilds of the internet and just start making amigurumi patterns. There is plenty of free patterns out there. You will never run out of resources. They can be absolutely anything. Make whatever you want, but start to pay attention specifically to the construction of the amigurumi. Instead of thinking of the amigurumi in terms of what it will be, what the final product is supposed to be, try and break it down into its constituent parts. We're basically asking how the sausage is made here. Stripped down to bare bones, I would say in general, of course there is exceptions, but in general, amigurumi begins with a magic circle, is then crocheted in rounds, increases make the pattern larger, decreases make the pattern smaller. Really simple when you strip it down like that, but that's all you need to start out with. A basic understanding of amigurumi and how it is generally constructed will serve you as a good, solid knowledge foundation upon which you can expand, gradually working your way up to crocheting more and more complex pieces. Number 3, accept you're going to make mistakes. Before you even begin designing your first amigurumi piece, you have got to acknowledge that this is not going to be a flawless process. You are going to bugger up, both in minor ways and probably some pretty major ways too. And it's probably going to happen a lot. And honestly, that can be scary. Failure sucks. It just does. But that doesn't necessarily make it a bad thing. Instead, try and think of those failures as learning opportunities. Take the chance to figure out where you went wrong or how you went wrong, and then use that knowledge to potentially avoid repeating those mistakes in the future. Number 4, take notes. Whether you prefer handwritten notes or you like to use a note-taking app, doesn't matter, but get in the habit of writing everything down as you crochet it. Not only will this allow you to replicate your pattern if you need to make multiple pieces, but it's also incredibly helpful when it comes to revising your pattern. With everything written down, it is so much easier to identify problem areas and either adjust or eliminate them as necessary. I cannot stress how much this tip has helped me, especially as someone who lives in an almost permanent state of brain fog. Incredibly helpful. If there is one tip you take away from this video today, I would recommend it be this one. Number 5 is to start basic. We're actually getting into the crochet part now, finally. In point 1, I said that amigurumi is generally crocheted in the round. Increases equal expansion, decreases reduction. So for your first piece, Just start there. Increase out for X number of rounds, follow this with rounds of just single crochet, and then you're going to decrease back down, adding stuffing or safety eyes before you close a piece if you wish. You can experiment with the shape by changing up the number of rounds you increase out for, how many rounds of single crochet you do between the increases and the decreases, and that is literally it. You don't need to get more complicated than that at this stage. Whatever shape you first make can always be improved upon by crocheting additional pieces, which brings me to point 6. And point 6 is expand upon what you have. So you have your first piece. Perhaps you already have a creature or critter in mind that you would like to make. Perhaps you're winging it and making stuff up as you go. There is no right or wrong here. This is all about getting a feel for amigurumi and how it comes together. Your task at this point is to take what you have and build upon it. And like with the previous step, this does not need to get overly complicated. You can stick with the basic principles of increase, single crochet, decrease, mixing and matching or leaving stuff out as you see fit. Maybe you want to crochet some eyes for your amigurumi. Well, a basic eye pattern is just a couple of increase rounds in a magic circle. Perhaps you're making some sort of bird and you want to make some wings. Well, you can take that flat circle and just fold it in half. And then you have a really basic wing pattern. Simple legs and arms are as easy as increasing out for a couple of rounds and then adding single crochet, and you're going to keep going until you reach the desired length. Again, that's pretty straightforward. We're keeping it simple. There are actually a lot of ways you can customize your little amigurumi creatures while sticking to those fundamentals. And then once you have your collection of assorted crochet pieces, it is time to attach or sew them to your original piece. And that's it. You have just designed your first amigurumi. From some of what I've seen out there on the internet, there are people who would disagree with me on that point. But personally, I'm just going to be honest, I'm not in favor of gatekeepy bullshit. So I do not care how consistent your tension is, if your sewing is visible, how symmetrical your pieces are. I do not care what the overall quality of your piece is. All of those things can be improved with time and practice. The important thing is you have taken the first step. You have designed your own amigurumi from scratch, and you should be proud of that. And then we can carry on to tip number 7, which is escalation. With the basics locked down, we can now notch up the difficulty. But we're not going from 0 to 100 here. We just want to push those boundaries a little bit. Originally, we increased out, we crochet down, and then we decrease to close. Cool. Let's escalate that. We'll start the same. We'll increase out. We'll crochet down. We'll start to decrease, but this time we're only going to decrease for 1, maybe 2 rounds. And instead of closing the piece, we'll instead increase back out. After increasing this second time, we can then repeat the process of single crocheting down and decreasing to finish off. This small change is a good way to make a combined head and body piece, and it's really not that much more difficult than what we did originally. We've just chucked in a couple of increase rounds at a specific point to give us a bit of a different shape. And you can apply this to all the other pieces we've made as well. Again, going back to an earlier example, what if for our wing, instead of just taking a flat circle and folding it in half, calling it a day, we instead took that semicircle we made and combined it with a flat circle, like I did for my baby budgie here. Separately, these pieces are pretty simple to make, but combined, they make for a more detailed looking wing. There are many unique combinations you can make by playing around with these otherwise simple pieces. And that kind of segues nicely into tip number 8, which is experimentation. Not gonna lie, this is one of my favorite things to do. I love just sitting down, playing with yarn, coming up with random crap just to see what happens. So at this stage, you should have a solid understanding of the basics, which means it is now time to ask yourself, what if? What if I increased by 3 or 4 or 8 every round instead of 6? What if I alternate between an increase round and a single crochet round? What if I stack all of my increases or decreases on one side of the pattern? What if I threw in a popcorn stitch or a bobble stitch or a loop stitch? Take advantage of your scrap yarn here and just let loose. Try whatever wacky or weird combinations or ideas come to mind. The worst thing that will happen is you'll have to frog some of your work, but the best thing that could happen is you discover something really awesome that you can use in your amigurumi patterns in the future. And aside from inventing cool new things, this is also a really great way to learn what combination of stitches make what shape. So what makes a triangle, for example, what makes a more oval pattern, what makes a squared off pattern. The more you play around, the more combinations you try, the more you're going to learn. And that brings us to number 9, which is to learn from others. Now, I want to be 100% crystal clear here because this is the internet and I want to make sure I am not misunderstood. I am in no way advocating for copying or stealing from other creators. What I am saying though is there are always going to be people who are more experienced than ourselves, who have knowledge of techniques that we do not, and learning from them can be a good way to expand our own knowledge. Again, do not directly copy from other designers, but if you find a useful method or technique, don't be afraid to play around with it, experiment with it, so you can then incorporate it into creating your own original amigurumi designs. And number 10 is just do it. I could have saved myself from making this whole video and just stuck with point 10. Just give it a go. From what I have seen, the biggest reason that seems to hold people back from trying to make their own amigurumi is fear and doubt. And yeah, those are valid feelings. I get it. I've been there. Hell, I am still there when it comes to certain patterns I'm trying to design. But really the only remedy is to just try. Pick up your hook and your scrap yarn and just get crocheting. Your first pieces probably aren't going to be great. They might be pretty terrible. I have a bunch of amigurumi here, some of my earliest pieces, that can attest to that. Look at this thing. That's just a tube. But it doesn't matter if they're terrible. That's not the point. And I don't want to sit here and just throw meaningless platitudes at you, but we all have to start somewhere. Only through perseverance and practice can we improve our skills, but you've got to start. You need to start first before you can improve your skills. That's just the way it works. And the only way we're going to get better is through practice, through trial and error. You've just got to take that first step. And if you can already crochet, if you have those skills, you can do this. I believe in you. So that concludes my list of tips for helping you get started designing your own amigurumi. Like I mentioned at the start of this video, this was just supposed to be an introduction to a larger series. So if you're interested in that, consider subscribing if you haven't already. This video was actually very last minute. I had something else entirely planned for tonight, but I've been dealing with some issues recently. On top of my regularly scheduled medical nonsense, I've been dealing with some new and exciting symptoms, particularly in like the neck and shoulder region. So between the arm pain and the headaches, I just haven't been able to crochet as much as I would like to. The mind is willing, but the body's like, yeah, nah, mate, not happening. I'm managing that as best I can, but going forward, I'm probably going to have to alternate between crochet videos and crochet adjacent videos, which is kind of daunting because I have pages and pages of notes for ideas regarding crochet games, challenges, tutorials, patterns. What I struggle with is coming up with ideas for these videos where it's just me sitting here talking to a camera, no crochet hook or yarn in hand. I'm kind of lost. I don't know what to do. So if any of you have ideas or topics you'd like to see addressed in these more talking head type videos, please share them with me because I don't know what to do. I look back at my video history and I'm like, okay, the yarn organization, done that. I've done the scrap yarn thing. I've done the future project ideas. What else is there? But I better come up with something because otherwise I'll have to go with my last resort and make a vlog. I'm not interesting enough to make a vlog. Anyway, before we finish up here for today, it is time for... Today, we are featuring a creator called Georgia Oak, and she says, I started crocheting at the beginning of 2020 because of a friend buying me a crochet kit. Then COVID hit and I fell in love with the craft and have never looked back. That seems to be a common story that I've seen, that a lot of people got into crocheting and crafting during the height of COVID. Let me know if you were one of those people. Did you get into crochet specifically because we were all trapped indoors and there was not really much else we could do apart from, I don't know, making bread? All of Georgia's links will be down in the description, so make sure you go and give her a follow. If you would like to participate in the hookup for yourself, there is also a link to a Google form down in the description. So go check that out, fill that in. Really simple. So that is all I have for you today. I hope you found this somewhat helpful if you're someone who is interested in designing your own amigurumi. As I mentioned, it is more of prep work and introduction to a much larger, more detailed designing amigurumi series. So consider subscribing if you're interested in that, or, just consider subscribing anyway if you haven't already. Like the video if you enjoyed it, share it if you think it's worth sharing, and I will see you all next week with another video. I very much hope it will contain crochet next time. It should do, because I had like 95% finished the video that was originally intended to go out tonight. I just couldn't get that last 5% done. Oh well. See you guys next week.